mention at the start of this, we are recording this conversation and we will be posting it up to the WC YouTube channel as soon as I can get to doing that after this conversation. But I'd like to start off by saying I'm Patrick Earl. I'm Economic Development Officer with Wheatland County, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our Small Business Week edition of our weekly Infinite Possibilities business collaboration. This week's conversation presenter is Shae Bird, Executive Director with Indigenous Tourism Alberta. And with that, I'd like to have Councillor Bigger on the call offer welcome to everybody on the call.
Thanks, Patrick. I would like, on behalf of Wheatland County Council, I'd like to welcome everybody to the call that we have through WC Possibilities, Infinite Possibilities, every Thursday. Very excited to have you here, Shae. One of my favorite topics is tourism, so very excited about that. And I'll let you go ahead. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Patrick and Councillor, and I will just share my screen.
All right. And Shae, as you're getting that set up, I'll just run over your bio.
Fantastic.
Shae is originally from Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island, but is now proud to call Alberta home while residing in Edmonton on Treaty 6 territory. Shae has worked across Western Canada, across 5 provinces and territories, leading an Indigenous tourism company, contracting for multiple destination marketing organizations in development and travel trade, and consulting work for various areas of the tourism industry. Shae has also found himself as a board proxy on the board of directors with Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, representing both the Northwest Territories and Alberta. Academically, Shae holds a diploma in business administration and is in the final stages of his master's degree in tourism management. Shae now holds the position as executive director for the Indigenous Tourism Alberta. And it's all you, Shae.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me. As mentioned, I'm Shae Bird. I'm the executive director for Indigenous Tourism Alberta. And just to clarify, you can see my screen all right?
Sure can.
Fantastic. Okay, so what I'd like to just kind of chat a little bit about of what Indigenous tourism is and who is Indigenous Tourism Alberta and how we really came to be. Indigenous Tourism Alberta is a new organization. We were incorporated in 2018 as a non-for-profit member-based association to help enhance the economic viability of Indigenous tourism throughout the province of Alberta. So, our mission is to provide that leadership in the development and the marketing of our authentic Indigenous tourism experiences throughout innovative partnerships and moving forward into a thriving Indigenous tourism economy, sharing authentic, memorable, and enriching experiences. So, a snapshot at Indigenous tourism within Alberta, what we see is in terms of GDP contribution, our studies shown from about 2017, we saw $166.2 million in GDP contribution, just under 3,000 jobs, and about 125 businesses within Alberta. And how we define our Indigenous tourism businesses is anyone that's working within the tourism space that is 51% owned and operated by either an Indigenous entrepreneur or an Indigenous community. We also recognize that when ITA was established, it was because that we knew in Alberta and across the country for that matter that the demand for Indigenous tourism far outweighed the capacity of product that we had currently in the province. So from there was a feasibility study done showing what was needed to really accelerate the growth of Indigenous tourism in Alberta. And from there, it was identified that having a tourism association specific for Indigenous tourism, similar to what you see in other more established provinces within the Indigenous tourism sector like BC and Quebec. So from there was a founding board that were identified through identifying the Indigenous tourism ambassadors or leaders throughout the province. And from there, we developed a strategy and started our first fiscal operating year in 2019. So Indigenous tourism in Alberta right now, as an association, we are broken into 4 regions, and that would be Central, South, North, and the Rockies. As of today, we have about 89 members. We break down our membership into three, 4 categories. So the first one is either in development or visitor ready. So what the in development means is, those entrepreneurs that are looking to establish their tourism business, or communities that are establishing their tourism business, or individuals from a visitor ready perspective that may be doing some type of Indigenous tourism product or offering or experience, but they don't have the foundational pieces of like a website or purchasable product online or those type of things. So very much in the infancy stages of their business. Then we go into our market ready businesses, and those are our businesses that have a established website. They probably have a TripAdvisor, so they have that user generated content of reviews and those type of things. You can find them within a Google search, and they're able to respond to emails within 48 hours for people to pre-book experiences and those type of things. And then we get to our export ready businesses, and how we define our export ready businesses is really a business that can be sold to those international markets or export them into those markets. So what that entails is, everything from having your website and the right policies and insurances in place and all those type of things. But in additional, being able to provide, price points that to accommodate net rates as well. So about anywhere from a 15 to 30% commission structure built in. So when we have our resellers in varying markets, whether it's in China, Japan, Germany, the UK, that they can have those individuals selling to those key markets of Indigenous Tourism Alberta and Travel Alberta. And we don't have to worry about any concerns of resellers not being able to have commissionable price points, but also the fact that we can build in those commission structures and the product itself feasible profit margin for the businesses. So right now we know that just under half of our businesses are still in the development or visitor ready stages within their business maturity. So we are an industry that is very new. It is very much so in the developmental stages, but with that shows a lot of opportunity for the amount of product that could be available in the coming years within Alberta. And then from a market ready level, we have about 34% of our businesses, or at least the businesses within our current membership. And then 21% of those businesses are actually export ready. And what you'll find is a lot of those businesses are, are Indigenous owned hotels or community owned hotels. And then, a few of those experiences as well that are a little bit more mature. They've been around probably 5 to 10 years, and they have had those experiences working with international markets. And we know also that COVID's obviously made an incredible impact, both from market ready perspective, but especially those international markets and export rate businesses that really relied on those international travelers coming in with the restrictions put in place. So just to give a little idea of the demand for Indigenous tourism, based on Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada's research, they did some economic or market snapshots in partnership with the Conference Board of Canada. And with that, it really identified that 1 in 4 domestic travelers within Canada are looking for some type of Indigenous tourism experience within their travel or within their itineraries or their short-term visit. And then from an international perspective, we saw that as an average, 1 in 3 international travelers were looking for that Indigenous tourism experience. And that ranges from anywhere to, say, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 from the US market to 65% of the French market, for example, coming from France, looking for Indigenous tourism experience. So we know that there is incredible demand for authentic Indigenous experiences, not only within Alberta, but across the country. And that kind of, again, emphasizes the importance of utilizing ITA as that vehicle to really support the industry from a development level, but also a marketing level. So Indigenous Tourism Alberta and some of the work that we're doing, our organization is really built up of four main pillars that we kind of align all our work with. So the first one is our development pillar, and we really look to support our members on the development side, or how can we mature their business? How can we get them from a visitor ready to a market ready, or a market ready to an export ready level? So in some ways that we currently do that is, right now we have a community readiness workshop, which is actually a 2-day workshop that will go into a Indigenous community and work to educate on what is Indigenous tourism, what are the opportunities, and assess whether the community is interested in Indigenous tourism, and then what are the key aspects within their community that they could start to build out on to create a bit of a tourism destination within their community. And things to look at vary from what's the accommodation capacity, what's there in terms of infrastructure for, so road access, signage, and then looking at community engagement, workforce levels within the community, what kind of training for the workforce there, and making sure there's alignment throughout. So obviously, if you're creating a handful of really incredible experiences, you need to have accommodation to have people stay there overnight, or they're not going to be anywhere to stay and they won't come. Another one is, if you're going to look to develop a couple hotels, who's going to work the hotels? Who's going to work the frontline staff? Are the staff there? Are the youth involved? So when things start to mature and those business volume grows, are you going to have the workforce to really support that development and that growth? From a marketing level, that's where we really look to support our market ready and our export ready businesses. So in doing so, we focus on varying aspects from marketing campaigns, international sales missions, and really just building out the awareness of Indigenous tourism throughout Alberta and creating that sense of place as Alberta as a premier Indigenous tourism destination. Just going a little bit more, from a development side, we also have our entrepreneur workshop. So similar to our community readiness workshop, this focuses on the entrepreneur itself. And this is a 1-day workshop that we have worked and created in partnership with the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada and also the government of Alberta. And with that is, if anyone's familiar with the TESS Entrepreneur Workbook, that's from the government of Alberta. It's similar, it's kind of a Indigenous tourism version of that. So we've adapted the language, the case studies, and also just the content in general to be able to provide the information and support for an entrepreneur that may just have a nice idea of something that they want to start, or maybe they just, within the first year or two of their business, and they want to help accelerate that to create a more viable business. And with this, in-depth workbook, we go through this, and at the end of it, they will have all the information there that really supports a strong business plan, or they could take that to, say, a funder, or try and get some financial assistance through, varying federal or provincial funding support. So that's something more based on the entrepreneur itself. And then we also have our cultural awareness program. So this is something that we created to really educate our non-Indigenous partners of, not only the history of the Indigenous communities within their region, and the why it's important to have Indigenous tourism incorporated into their strategies, their development, their meetings and conventions, and those type of things. But also just to look at their structure of, for example, a DMO or a hotelier. What are they doing to educate their guests on the land that they're coming to? And the goal of this is really, how can you build reciprocal relationships with the Indigenous community and Indigenous entrepreneurs within the region that these respected non-Indigenous tourism partners are in, to build out those reciprocal relationships and further support those businesses and further support those entrepreneurs more so than we've seen in the past. And then when they're also doing their marketing, whether it's marketing campaigns regionally or internationally, or their fam tours and those type of things, making sure that they're also integrating those Indigenous tourism experiences, and doing so not only in a way that's just the typical way of doing it from their non-Indigenous partners, but doing it in a way that's authentic and appropriate, and the story is being led by those Indigenous entrepreneurs themselves. And I think this is a very key piece to take into consideration is Indigenous tourism is not the same as non-Indigenous tourism. Things are done differently from a marketing level, from a development level, from an engagement level to just a relationship level. So all these different facets that go into your typical even motivators for why people are working in tourism are going to be different from an Indigenous side to a non-Indigenous side. So these are all the things that we kind of touch on and help educate on the why it's important, and really go from doing things to check off a box to doing it because it's your responsibility for the land that you live on and the communities that you're working with, and also just our responsibility in terms of reconciliation. Something we came out with this year was our ITA Stimulus Relief Fund, and that was in partnership with Western Economic Diversification to reallocate some of our existing funding to really support our Indigenous tourism members in a way to, pretty much try and keep the doors open. We know that Indigenous tourism as a whole has been more vulnerable than the other, respected areas within the tourism sector based on the sheer infancy of the industry itself. And, like I said, the majority of our businesses are in those development stages. So, they don't have, say, the financial capacity of the workforce to really get through, a rough year, let alone a global pandemic. So providing that stimulus relief fund was extremely important because, we're hearing from our operators that they would have shut their doors. They'd be looking for another job if they didn't have, that relief support to really just, pay their overhead, pay the electricity bill, support their staff members, and also continue the momentum of development through these challenging times where we may not be seeing the visitation that we were seeing originally. Another way that we've really adapted, and just keep in mind that, when COVID hit in March, we adapted our entire one-year action plan for this year. So a lot of these COVID-specific action items are adaptations to our existing strategic plan. So our Indigenous Tourism Roadshow Summit was a adaptation of our one annual 2-day event that we host year over year. We've done one so far in our first fiscal, and this is our second fiscal. We were planning on doing a 2-day event, and what that looks like is really a 2-day Indigenous tourism event that brings in, the industry from across the province to both celebrate Indigenous tourism and also educate on various keynotes and breakout sessions on different development facets of tourism, different marketing aspects of tourism, showcasing, some performances as well, and sharing, the education behind those performances, and just, kind of shining a light on what is Indigenous tourism and what are the impacts, and really celebrate that as a community, and then helping also build a platform to network so we can have our more matured Indigenous tourism businesses network with, maybe those newer businesses that may be going through the challenges that more of those matured businesses have already faced. Obviously, we couldn't do our 2-day event this year due to COVID, so we adjusted it based on a 2 one-day roadshow summits. And what that looked like was we did one at Métis Crossing, which was it was a smaller event. So we had up to, I think, 70 people or 70 participants, but it was all outdoors, and the outdoor setting had capacity for about 200. So, we worked very close with health and safety to ensure that all social distancing guidelines and everything were in place, and then we kind of went above and beyond. And then we did a second one in Calgary on Tsuut'ina Nation at the Great Eagle, which again, we had to do it indoors due to the challenges of working outdoors in that area. So our visit or our attendance was lower. We had a 50% or 50 attendee capacity for that one. But again, it was just a wonderful way to continue to provide that support and also do it in a very unique way. And then lastly, from those two events, we're hosting a virtual Indigenous Tourism Summit on November 4th, which will be up to 300 participants, and that'll be accessible, anyone that has that internet connection. And from there, it will be a one-day full-on event of both breakout session, keynote. Some will be recorded from our original one, but we'll have the speakers there in real time to actually answer questions while they're watching the presentation themselves. We'll have some networking opportunities as well, some live performances, and then also an artisan exhibit hall, which is really a really exciting way to highlight our Indigenous tourism artisans across the province. So again, that will be happening November 4th, and we're very excited for that. So between the three events, we were actually able to surpass our KPI for participants in our original Indigenous Tourism Summit, but also provide that support and do so in a way that has health and safety of our attendees top of mind. And then lastly, for this virtual event, it will be a one-day event, but any participants that actually join us for the event will be able to go back and log in for the following 7 days to review any of the videos or the sessions, and be able to do so on their own time if they're unable to actually attend the entire event for the one day. We've also created a ITA support page, which provides online educational webinars, everything from cash flow management with various partners that expertise in that, like Business Link, for example, or how to do social media 101, how to integrate health and safety regulations into your existing business, and also just how to adapt your experience based on the new reality of what we're all kind of facing. And then lastly, we are working on an enhanced community readiness online program, which is a very exciting piece that we're working on that is actually it will complement our existing in-person workshop, but do so from a online platform that will have a 7-module kind of cohort for anyone across the province within community that want to kind of go and assess their community from a community readiness level with that one-on-one support as well with the ITA staff member throughout. So that's a very exciting program that we have in development right now that we'll be launching in January. From a marketing perspective, we've done a lot of content creation projects. As a new organization, there wasn't a lot of content that we currently had. So we had the opportunity, given the environment, to really try and gain a lot more content, whether it's video content or photo content. So that's something that we've really prioritized over the last 6 to 12 months. We've done some really great mainstream media awareness for members, whether it's on-session interviews with CTV Morning News in Calgary and Edmonton, going out to those Indigenous operators and sharing those experiences with the Alberta residents, because we do know that the awareness for Indigenous product within Alberta is fairly low still. And that's to be understood, given we're a new organization and this is a new sector of the tourism industry. So finding unique ways to really build out that awareness of all the incredible Indigenous experiences throughout the province, because there's a lot of experiences that you don't need to travel a far way to actually have. A lot of the individual residents within Alberta have some type of Indigenous experience in their own backyard, and they may just not be unaware of the experience itself or how unique and transformative some of these experiences really are. And then we also launched a new consumer website, which you'll see kind of in the photo there on the left. And that really helps, create a consumer-focused website when you go to our website to drive more traffic to those businesses and to those business websites, to just have a little bit more ease of access for travelers or Alberta residents or whoever wants to really explore some of these Indigenous tourism experiences, especially if they already have a trip coming up. The VFR market, visiting friends and relatives, is a huge market in Alberta. So when you're going, say, a couple hours to visit your family for the weekend, knowing that you can go onto the website and look in that region, what are the experiences there, and then maybe book something for yourself or you and your family to experience while you're doing that trip. And then conference and trade show attendance, this is something that we're always trying to do. Obviously, given this current environment, there's not a lot in person, but we have been participating in various virtual events that have, trade shows, trying to maintain those relationships with those resellers in those international markets and keep top of mind in terms of, Alberta as an Indigenous tourism destination, because we know there is no international travel right now, but we do know it will resume eventually. So we want to do our due diligence in making sure that we continue to be top of mind. We continue to not only nurture the existing relationships, but also create new relationships with a lot of these key markets that we've identified as we move forward. And then our partnership marketing campaign is something that I'm very excited about. And this is something that we're able to do in partnership with Travel Alberta's co-op funding. And what this looks like is we're able to get some support to partner with some major regional DMOs to actually create an Indigenous tourism campaign within their expected regions so that they can highlight the vastness of Indigenous experiences within their region, but also use their following that's existing to drive traffic to those businesses. So that's something that we've done one so far with Explore Edmonton that went fantastically. I don't know if anyone saw it, but it was called Explore Indigenous Edmonton, and it highlighted all the experiences that were Indigenous owned and operated that are within their region, and we'll be doing more so as the fiscal continues. So that's something that we're really excited about. From a leadership and partnership perspective, we've been able over the past year create some strong geographical growth across the province. So we have an office in Calgary and an office in Edmonton as well. So we have our development manager and myself in Edmonton, and then our marketing manager in Calgary, which just helps kind of diversify that location and also build stronger relationships within both regions and extending outwards more north and more south. We've expanded our ITA team. Obviously, I came in January as the new executive director, and there was no staff members at the time. So I've had to build out my team. And as we move into our next fiscal year and our new funding agreements, we'll be expanding that even more so to be able to accomplish a lot more as an organization. In a reaction to COVID, we've also waived our membership fees. So that means that any Indigenous tourism entrepreneur or community that either has an Indigenous tourism business that is more matured or a fairly new business can now become a member of Indigenous Tourism Alberta for no fee. And they can do so by going to our industry page on our website and then going to membership. We've really been focusing and building those relationships from various municipal, provincial, and federal partners on why prioritizing Indigenous tourism is important and also in top interest for the province of Alberta, because as we build this recovery for Alberta's tourism economy, we know that Indigenous tourism had such a huge demand. It had more growth than any other sector within tourism leading up to it. And we know there's so much opportunity with the amount of businesses that are still in development. So we do identify Indigenous tourism as a key piece to recovering not only the tourism industry within Alberta, but also just our economic diversification as a whole. Meeting with partners to discuss and bring to the table and help educate, because like I said, a lot of people don't fully understand what Indigenous tourism is and also the opportunities that come with it. We've been continuously building strategic partnerships, whether it's with regional DMOs or even just municipalities or different economic recovery task force. Working with the Alberta Tourism Association. Obviously, Travel Alberta is a huge partner of ours. Right now, more than ever, we need to think about how can we build strategic partnerships, and even more so in ways that, it may not be that top of mind thinking of partnership. It could be someone from a different industry, but there could be some alignment there with their mandates or what they're trying to achieve. And I think right now we can really ask ourselves, who can we work with to really find some alignment and also leverage each other's strengths and resources to further what we're all trying to achieve, and in turn build out that recovery for Alberta. Again, I touched on this earlier, but advocacy through federal and provincial government, and then just making sure there's that industry-wide alignment of Indigenous tourism and what is authentic Indigenous tourism and how you market those things authentically and appropriately. How do you develop Indigenous tourism, and how do you build those reciprocal relationships with those Indigenous tourism operators in a way that is appropriate, authentic, and respectful, in a way that, again, is a reciprocal relationship, not a one-way relationship, because that's very important. So that kind of sums up everything for ITA as a whole. I'm just going to take this off here. But yeah, so Indigenous tourism Alberta, there's huge opportunity there. There's huge potential, and we know that once we get through these challenges with COVID, that demand is going to bring. We will be the first to kind of recover. And actually, with Tourism HR Canada just a couple of days ago, and they said with their research, they identified Indigenous tourism being one of the first to recover once international travel does reopen, because we know that that demand is so high. Unfortunately, because we have so many vulnerable businesses and such a vulnerable industry, we are at serious threat of actually losing the majority of our industry. And without the product and without those entrepreneurs and businesses, we're not going to be able to supply that demand regardless of how high it is. So that's kind of what our really mandate is, to really find ways to support and continue marketing those Indigenous tourism businesses and really create Alberta as a premier Indigenous tourism destination, because we have all the right things. We have the communities and the entrepreneurs that want to work within that field. We have such a diversity of Indigenous communities across the province, and we really just need to put the pieces together and continue to support to have that be a key piece of the economic recovery as a whole within Alberta. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you. And if you have any questions, yeah, the floor is open.
Great, thanks, Shae.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Sorry, it's Carolyn here, Carolyn Melnick. I'm just wondering, at this point in time, could you guesstimate how many people are working in the Indigenous tourism industry in Alberta right now? I work with labor and immigration, so I'm always curious about, labor generally, like youth and, older Albertans, that kind of thing. And also I'm thinking, we have some programs for training, upskilling employees and training employees. And I was thinking maybe some of that funding might be useful to some of your members.
Absolutely, yeah. So actually, I'm submitting a proposal that's due Friday on doing a labor market study through the Ministry of Labor, looking specifically at Indigenous tourism and looking at, okay, where is the workforce currently? Where are the knowledge or education gaps or training gaps? And what are the existing, programs currently? And really just figure out where are the gaps to grow this industry, and where are the gaps, because right now we know that one of the largest challenges for our Indigenous operators is having that skilled labor force. So that I think if the proposal is accepted, that will be a great research study. But from a jobs perspective, we know that pre-COVID we were looking at about 3,000 jobs, and our COVID impact research that has been done with the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada and the Conference Board Canada identified about a 60% decrease in Indigenous tourism jobs. And again, that study was done around April. So there is a pretty good chance that those numbers are actually more detrimental than what was presented. So some of those impacts, we looked at for Alberta, a loss of 60% of those Indigenous tourism jobs, a loss of 37% of the Indigenous tourism businesses, and a 62% drop in GDP contribution coming from Indigenous tourism within Alberta. So again, those numbers are quite significant. And again, this was a study done around April. So that was without consideration of a second wave or borders being shut down for this length of time and those type of things. So I would suggest that those numbers will actually be even more detrimental than what they currently are.
Do you mind me asking, is that LMP funding that you're working on? Labor Market Partnership funding? Is
Correct,
that with
yes.
Jeff?
I was working through Lisa.
Oh, Lisa Beaudry. Okay, thanks.
Correct, yes. Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions for Shae?
Patrick, it's not a question, but it's a comment. Shae, I'm also the president of the Canadian Badlands, and we've acquired 2031. We're just going through the start of our consulting program and our workshops. And a little later on, Travel Alberta will be with us and joining us for some of these sessions. And I really, I'll take down your contact information and have an invite sent to you, and hopefully that you guys will find a need to join in with some of these decisions. We've kind of, well, I don't know another word to say. We kind of blew up the Canadian Badlands, and we're starting with new values, new vision. So I know what you're going through or went through last year and the year before. So I think it's a good thing, and I think there's room for some collaboration and partnership through us too. So I will be in
Absolutely.
contact.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'd love the opportunity to participate in that. So yeah, definitely reach out. I'll put my email in the chat box here, and I would love the opportunity. And right now, again, like everyone is, we're redoing our strat plan to revise our 4-year strategy. From our goal right now is by 2024 to get to pre-COVID economic numbers. So with that comes, a really unique and new way of doing things and restructuring how our organization moves forward and provides that support. So I think, a lot of those numbers do point to a doom and gloom type mood or, tone, if you will, which is, to be fair. But I think there are also an incredible amount of opportunities right now. If we can support our businesses to survive through this, for example, with COVID, people aren't traveling internationally, and it is an incredible time to build awareness to the Alberta residents of those Indigenous tourism businesses. And, for the Alberta resident to just get out, do a weekend trip, take your kids out or take your spouse out or go for a medicine walk. There's such a variety of experiences. It's not just hotels and casinos. There's culinary, artisans, medicine walks, hiking, and then fishing, rock climbing tours that integrate, the archaeological information with the traditional knowledge and those type of things. There really is such a diversity of Indigenous tourism businesses throughout Alberta, and this is a fantastic opportunity to really share that awareness from a provincial perspective, because as we move forward and things start to resume, international travel continues, those Alberta residents are really going to be the ambassadors of being proud of the Indigenous communities and experiences within their region as well, and they're going to share it with their friends. We also know that a large portion of Alberta's tourism GDP is Alberta residents traveling throughout Alberta, or the visiting friends and relatives market. And when you're traveling, to say Uncle Joe, who's up in Fort Mac, you're not going to be saying, I want to do this, this, and this. You're going to go to Uncle Joe's and say, hey, what are we going to do? You're the expert. You live here. Take me and do some fun things. So I think that provides an opportunity to also just educate on the variety of experiences to that resident. So when those friends and families are coming to visit, that, those Indigenous tourism experiences are at least top of mind when they're thinking of what to do. And, I think it's unrealistic to think that people are going to go from no Indigenous experiences to, oh, we're going to do a medicine walk, and then we're going to stay at the Great Eagle, and then we're going to do this. Like, it doesn't need to be all or nothing, but I think just integrating one Indigenous experience on your day or your weekend away is how you start that momentum. And there's certainly enough products right now within Alberta to supply that. But as demand continues to grow, I think with the Alberta resident, and then again, when international travel resumes, it also provides the foundational support for those businesses that are still in the development to get to more of those market ready levels, and also try and supply that incredible demand that we're seeing across the country and internationally.
Definitely. Awesome. Go ahead, Donna.
Yes, I agree with you totally. And it is our backyards that we need to know what's going on. And this year, I mean, some of the operators were had seen faces like new visitors that were people that very far away, and I think that's them being the ambassadors is a perfect way to look at it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Shae, I have a question for you. With the cultural awareness program, what's the lead time that would be needed to set something up like that in our region?
Yeah, right now we've identified where we are hosting this year just based off resources, and we've only piloted one. We're doing our second one next week in Calgary. But because of COVID, we have a very limited amount of space. So we've actually reached out to individuals to attend based on who we decided would make the most impact as of right now. And again, based on the fact that it's a very limited amount with COVID. My goal is, and again, we have to kind of spread things out regionally as well within our 4 regions and stuff like that. So this year we're doing Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, and Fort McMurray. But as we move forward into next year, again, depending on how our funding conversations and negotiations go with both federal and provincial government, as an association, all our funding agreements end at the end of this fiscal, and we're really advocating to get that continual support so we can implement this long-term strategy without concerns about funding. And I know everyone's having the same challenges right now, but once we have that kind of baseline secured, then I would really like to be doing these cultural awareness programs, much more so, at least double, so we can really, because what I've seen across the board is there is a huge appetite for something like this that is not only a cultural awareness program, but a cultural awareness program that integrates the tourism aspect into it and the economic development aspect into it and really bridges the gap of why it's important from those perspectives as well. So it's a very unique product that we're putting out. And so this year, like I said, it will be a little limited, but moving forward into our next fiscal, we'll be looking to do more.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions for Shae? Okay. Well, thanks, Shae. We're going to continue on with our regular agenda now. You're more than welcome to hang around and go through that with us. It gives you a bit of an update from our support groups. There's 1 or 2 here, and an update with Wheatland County too. So
Fantastic.
We'll go through that. Okay, so if Councillor Bigger or Reeve Link, if you want to give us an update on what's going on with council with Wheatland.
I'm going to let Donna
I can start.
take it. I just want to listen in to Shae's presentation. So go ahead, Donna. Thank you.
Perfect.
The council was presented with our Economic Development Board update. WC brand is 1 year old. Yay. And they presented to us some new terms of reference. Some of the avenues and that we're digging more into would be investment, tourism, marketing, and looking into those key goals for the year coming up. And yeah, it's exciting. Economic development has come a long ways. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. And move on to administration. Matt, do you want to give an update on that?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. And thanks for the presentation, Shae. It was very informative. And so just from the administration side of things, we're continuing on with our budget process, of course. We just finished our council meeting this week and got a few things done at that meeting, of course, as Councillor Bigger indicated. From the economic side of things, we're pretty busy in that division, so the terms of reference and the annual report was presented. We also just actually last night finished our second round of engagement with our municipal development plan. looking at infrastructure and servicing and the rest. So we had a very successful engagement with our community, and it is posted on the website for those who are interested in listening to the engagement session and taking part in some of the questions, providing responses for us to consider as we review our municipal development plan. So that was successful. Several other initiatives and projects on the go as we enter into the winter season. Our cultural recreation master plan, we're starting up engagement for that again as well. But we're just continuing on with those kind of annual projects, most notably, as mentioned, our budget process. So stay tuned for the budget, hearing news about that. We do have some engagement for our budget as well that residents can take a look at on the website as well. So that's important too. Thanks, Pat.
Sounds great. Thanks, Matt. On the economic development side, we are definitely very focused on the Small Business Week. We've been doing a lot of sessions. We have one more for this week that the WC Wheatland County is hosting right after this call with it's a Grow with Google session. And then we are also working on the website migration, and we'll be pushing out a lot of the session builds that we've been recording through this week out through YouTube, and really starting to promote our YouTube channel and its content. As well, we've also been marketing into the Edmonton and Calgary region our new community profile, and we've been doing that for a few weeks now. We've had over 25,000 impressions on the community profile in these markets. And overall, with that, and in combination with Small Business Week promotion of the sessions, we're about 55,000 impressions. So the WC brand is definitely getting awareness, especially in the Calgary market and Wheatland region, of course. And yeah, so it's there's a lot of things going on the marketing side right now. And of course, with what Matt's been saying, we've been working on the economic development budget, and what Donna's been saying with the new terms of reference with the board, making it more of a working board. So there should be a lot more support and activities coming out of economic development in the county. So it's a very exciting time and a very challenging time. So keep following us. There's always something new happening. And with that, we'll go to the business support group. So I'm going to pick on Carolyn and see if she can give us an update from labor and immigration.
Thanks, Patrick. I don't have much of an update to give you. We are in the throes of our government looking at ways to deal with the economic conditions here in the province, and that has been a big focus for all of our work. It's been really interesting to hear your presentation, Shae. I just get excited when I hear about growth in new areas in the province, and this is just exciting to hear about. And also, I just want to say thank you to the group. I really appreciate being able to be a part of this group and just to kind of understand what's going on in this region. And this is a way to do that, hear what's happening, and hear what the challenges are, but also to hear about the goals for the year to come, and just all the excellent economic development work that's been done in this region over the last year and a half or so is just phenomenal. It's again, I appreciate being a part of the group. So that's all I have to say today. But thanks.
Great, thanks, Carolyn. And just I'll do a call out to anybody that's in a round table, anybody who wants to bring anything else up for the week. And yeah, let's see if anybody has anything to share. Okay, and with that, I guess we will we'll end this session for this week. And Councillor Bigger, if you want to just tie this all up for us.
Thanks, Patrick. I want to thank Shae again for tourism is deep, deeply in my heart, and I agree with Carolyn. It's very, very exciting to have something new and new operators. The thought of new operators going out in these kind of times is even it's actually rewarding, or not rewarding, but gives a little positive light for today. I want to thank everybody else for joining the call, and we'll see and talk to you all next week.
Sounds great. Thanks,
a lot.
Councillor Brugger. And yeah, so we'll see everybody again next Thursday. And definitely stop in infinitewc.ca and check out our social links. I will be posting and have been posting the YouTube or the sessions into YouTube as they've been happening this week. So the ones we even did yesterday are already up on the YouTube page. So just go to the footer at the bottom of infinitewc.ca and you'll be able to catch up on the sessions that you may have missed through the week. And again, see you next week.
Thanks, Shae. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Midweek.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shae. I'll talk to you in a bit.
Sounds good.
Okay.